Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Irish Food Trade Connect Conversations. I'm delighted to have the editor of the Hotel and Restaurant Times with me today, Cyril McAree. Cyril, thanks very much for joining me this afternoon.
Not at all, Margaret. It's a pleasure to be asked.
And tell me, the publication has been around a long, long time.
A bit like myself, Margaret. Yeah, I actually started the business back in 1998, and essentially it would have been a trade magazine that would have been sent out on as I suppose a list of subscribers to hotels and restaurants throughout the country. And we did that right up to COVID. And when COVID came along, I suppose like so many other companies, we didn't know what was going to happen. I genuinely thought my business was going to end. I was considering going to drive a delivery driver for Tesco with the like, because honestly, I didn't see a future. Like, the world stopped. It was a crazy time. And then somebody said to me, look, Cyril, maybe you should go online. And I thought, no, look, I don't have something to sell. I'm not like a product or, you know what I mean? It's a magazine. And it was explained to me, no, like, it would be of interest to people, so why not do it? So at the time, in fairness to the government, they were very supportive to a lot of businesses during COVID. They had a grant scheme and you applied for it. And part of it was for a digital platform. And we were given us a small grant, a support grant, and we put some money towards it ourselves. And from that, we put the publication up online. And yeah, so
it was the adaptation of COVID as well. I mean, and it has gone so much since COVID, and a very difficult time on the industry that you're operating in and reporting on as well, which was a challenge for the people who you serve and yourself.
Yeah, no, it was a massive shift. I mean, I don't think people really realise what impact COVID had on hospitality or the sector, tourism sector. I would estimate probably 80% of people working in hospitality left. Some went back to their own countries. Some went back to their own countries of origin and that. And in fairness to businesses, those that could supported as best they could their staff and that there, but it's finite what they could do. They couldn't keep it going all the time. So there's a great loss of intelligence from the sector. People who understood the business, were working in it for 10 years or more, all of a sudden were left. With that, they found a different quality of life for themselves, a different life set, and didn't want to come back into hospitality. So it was a challenging time for the sector.
To be fair, it's not the easiest sector to work in. A lot of people that are working at it on their feet all the time, dealing directly with the direct consumer, dealing with the public, and that's not always the easiest. So it's quite a challenging job, to be fair.
Well, it is, but there again, it's like anything else. It doesn't suit everybody. That's true. But equally, neither does medicine. And I sometimes, think it's hilarious if you consider. I always give the analogy of two kids at school, and one will tell their guidance school teacher they're going to go and do medicine, and the other person is saying, I'm going into work in hospitality. Well, the person going for medicine will be told, oh, that's a great job, and you'll do really well. Whereas hospitality, well, what's that? There's no real career in that. And that's a big problem for the sector. There's a massive career in hospitality. When people think of hospitality or the food in the hotel and restaurant sector, they think primarily of cooking and serving food. That's all they see.
Very true. Very true now.
Right. They don't think of anything else. So they don't see what goes on behind that. They don't see the marketing. They don't see the finance. They don't see sales. They don't see anything else. They just think of serving food and cooking food. But it has a myriad of other opportunities for people. And I would say that if you have a career in hospitality, it's a passport to travel the world. If you have a good discipline in it and a good career, a good I suppose a good position in it, you'll travel the world. And the hours are no different. If you look at a junior doctors work on average 80 hours a week plus, right? And, people will be saying like, that was okay. But when you look at hospitality, people are giving out about them working maybe 45, 50 hours a week. It's perception. It really is perception.
It's perception. And I think with the international piece, because food is very different across the world.
Yeah.
Across the world, it's very different. And, I think, and I suppose from an educational point of view, maybe we need to look at that a bit differently, because you're dead right, people go into it. And I think, there's many different sides to it, from purchasing to finance to all sorts, I suppose. And like being a doctor, I think there's kind of a vocation in it. I think there's a bit of a vocation in it, to be fair.
Yeah.
The same as working in food. You
Yeah.
work in food because you care about the people in it and the industry. And to be fair to it, it was the one that, held up during difficult times. People always need to eat. And, that's where hospitality adapted during the COVID, is that a lot of people adapted to the outside eating.
Well, if you take it that, some very well established restaurants and some high-end restaurants, all of a sudden were doing takeaway. Like all of a sudden they had a takeaway menu that was available, that was unheard of. And these were 4 and 5 star properties that were doing takeaways. Okay, when things settled down and, COVID, it was agreed that the businesses would open up again and things opened up. Things returned to a degree to the norm, but there was a new shift and a difference. There's more offerings now out there. You take the likes of food trucks. You take, getting food from a horse box. Let's be honest, it was something.
I know. Would you ever think, and some gourmet stuff now coming.
It's something you wouldn't have countenanced before COVID. Needs must, and people adapted and they became very creative. And the food. When we talk to people who travel abroad, and they'll go, say, maybe to Asia and places like that, and they'll come back waxing on lyrically about the street food, right?
Yeah.
And we think, what? You're eating the street? You wouldn't get away with that in Ireland. But all of a sudden, we slowly, that's what became a norm in a sense. So it's very much a market that is out there, and how you adapt to it and how you change to it. And I think, you see, I look at myself, I'm now of a certain age where I would have a certain way of what I consider eating out. Whereas younger people, the Generation Z or whatever you want to call them, they have a different way of eating. They have a different concept and a different idea. They're more into sharing. They're into it's communal. It's that sort of connection. It's being a group. It's not the old, where I would have went down, with my partner or whatever else, and went to it, got a table, and sat at the table and ate our meals. Younger people now want a different experience, and the food experience has changed, and the food industry has to move to meet those changing demands.
It does, and I do agree with you on, I would be the same. I like to go in and I like to have a nice dinner in a nice place to eat. And and especially since COVID, I'm more kind of like, if I'm going out, I don't go out an awful lot, but when I do go out, I like to go to somewhere nice. But I see my kids, all they want to be doing, the fridge could be full here, Cyril, and all they want to be doing is ringing the takeaway man.
Yeah.
They just, and sometimes I feel like a bit of a fool here making a dinner because no one eats it. But this is, and it's no insult to me. Now, I've kind of got over that. It's no insult to my cooking or anything. But this is the way the young people, teenagers, and I keep saying it, this is costly. This is but it just goes above the head. But they do.
They have a different attitude to it.
They have.
Can you think of the number of delivery food companies that have been created worldwide? I'm not going to name them, but we know who they are, right? And you pick up your phone, you have your app, whatever else it is, and you go on your phone and you order your food and it's delivered. It's crazy. Years ago, when I was younger, you drove to the takeaway and got it, came home with it, and hope the Jesus would be warm by the time you got home.
There'd be only chips available. There wouldn't be a 4-course dinner.
That would be about it. But no, food has changed. There's no two ways about it. But what's probably concerns me around the whole area of food and food service is the disappearance of producers in this country.
It is, yeah.
A lot of people probably don't realise. If you go into a supermarket today and you pick up your veg or your fruit or whatever else, well, your fruit is okay, but your vegetables, your basic stuff, you're getting carrots from Spain, you're getting stuff from Greece, you're getting stuff from Netherlands, you're getting stuff from Germany. Irish producers are gone. They're going. At one point, there were maybe 500 or 600 producers in Ireland. It's down to 60 at the moment.
Yeah.
That's scary.
It is scary. And from what I see is that, and a lot of the producers, what actually really gets their name out there is that they're on a high-end, restaurant menu.
Hmm.
And that then gets them visibility.
Mm.
But it probably depends on, and look, as I'd always advise, you need a balance. You can't be all food service and you can't be all
Mm.
retail. And anyone that was all food service during the COVID got badly hit. So
Mm.
and there needs to be online as well. You need to be driving, but it's just that how and especially for certain areas like produce. I mean, how do you brand produce? So there's specific areas where, and I do think the hospitality area have been very supportive of, like, if you go into, you'll often see local product and it named on the menu, and that's marketing for companies.
Chefs love that. If you look at France, for instance, the French are masters at this. They love the regionality of their foods and love talking about the fact that the food that they put on the plate is all local and that they can name the farmer who supplied to them and all the rest. And in fairness, a lot of good restaurants and the likes of the Restaurant Association and people like that and the IHF and people like that have gotten together and are supporting that idea that you have this sense of community. Food community, right?
Yeah.
So that the provenance of the food is known. So when you're sitting down for your dinner in a restaurant or eating out, that the beef comes from a farmer X, or your vegetables come from, supplier Y, or whatever else it is. So you have that connection, and that's important. But as I say, obviously it's becoming more and more difficult. I mean, the costs of producing food is getting more and more prohibitive. I mean, we import potatoes. Think about it. Ireland imports potatoes. It's bizarre.
I know. Yeah, it is, and I think like and potatoes have been a very challenging one as well. I suppose our weather here for growing certain things, and if it, and the same with the UK, if it goes bad in one, I used to notice it with cauliflower all the time.
Mm.
Like if cauliflower got short here, and it's definitely more short in the UK, and you might have to import it from France, and then it's a different cost altogether.
Mm-hmm.
But the cost of production it's a challenging one here, and you have to be highly efficient or at a decent scale to be able to make it work.
I think you've got to go back to the formation of the EEC, as it was called, the Economic European Market. I mean, it was a great concept and a great idea. But EU now, to a great sense, dictates and sort of controls things. I remember a good few years ago, the debates on the radio, on the media about set aside land where people were being paid not to grow anything, right? That they were being paid by the EU not to grow. Now that to me creates an unnatural market. Maybe I'm wrong, but all of a sudden you've been told you can't grow something there. So that means you have to import your foods. And then if you're importing your foods, then there's an extra cost to that. And that's passed on to the consumer, because at the end of the day, the consumer pays.
But it's a challenging one, and yet I totally agree with you. The consumer is the last one hit, and I suppose that's where scale matters. Being able to produce something at scale matters, and I suppose a lot of what they're determining from the EU is this balance of trade. But I suppose at the moment it's very concerning for anyone producing here. That do we have any say over what happens to us in Ireland as regards tariffs? It's a hard one, and then sometimes are we large enough to make our decisions? But I often get concerned about our stance in Europe and who's fighting our case for trade in Europe.
If you take it to seafood, I mean, now again, somebody can correct me on this, but as I understand it, any sea bass that is caught off the Irish coast, I think it can be landed here, but it then is exported to France, and we then import it back in. So this is sort of the sort of carry on that's gone on. These are things you hear. How true are they? It's hard to quantify it. As we both know, social media has become more and more prevalent in today's world. It's something that people are turning to for their information at a rate of knots. As I say, we migrated from a traditional print publication to an online service that brought its own challenges. We would like to think that we are a reliable, trusted resource and source of information. But there's so much stuff out there that you can't really... I mean, there are people now create themselves as gurus and influencers and know-alls about it all.
But, in your line of work, that must really, I mean, how do you take a view or a balance on that? Because you're actually reporting real life stories, right? And there's an awful lot of people, going into restaurants and saying they've had this experience, and then you see gifted at the end of it, and you see all of this.
Yeah,
But and after so many years, I mean, you're what is it, 20 odd years?
20,
So like you've seen a lot of movement.
I've
You've
seen,
seen a lot of movement.
I've seen it all. I've seen the things. I've seen business good, business bad. I've seen challenges and all the rest of it. But I think where we're at the moment is quite concerning, because for so long, and in fairness, there is now an attempt from Europe to try and regulate this and sort of make it more transparent in a sense. But like for years, there have been people out there that have been, I suppose, being paid, but not reporting the fact they're being paid. Right? That they were going out there claiming all sorts of unsubstantiated stuff. Oh, this is a fantastic product, this is a fantastic restaurant, this is a fantastic hotel. Behind it, they were getting paid, they were being gifted stuff. I've heard stories of people being gifted from cars to kitchens to, whatever. Right? Now revenue are taking an interest in this nowadays, and I think there's a lot of people now getting a bit concerned because revenue are following these people now. But I mean, it's crazy. Makeup particularly, from a female perspective, a lot of these sort of makeup artists were online promoting all sorts of stuff.
I have a bee in my bonnet, and I won't mention the makeup company, right? I won't. But every man and its dog is anyone that with any kind of following. Now, and I'm saying this, and I'll say it honestly, these women could be stone mad, and I'm looking at them and going, how you're diluting a brand. This particular brand is being diluted by the type of influencer, or
yes,
I mean, really, it's being diluted.
Yeah.
So it's like anyone that you'd take for a job. Would you just give a job to anyone? No, we're all interviewed for certain jobs. Yeah. But this just seems to be out of control. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. But it's like reviewers. I don't believe, and it's a personal view, I don't know what gives somebody the right to go into a restaurant, sit down and have a meal, and then write up a review of that experience. Without doing it on a more fair way. Like if you want to review somewhere, you don't do it just once. You should go in there at least 3 times and experience it. So have consistency, right? So you've a couple of experiences and then you balance it out. I know of people that have gone in, like these reviewers, that have gone into a property and destroyed it. They have never probably worked in a kitchen. They've never probably cooked themselves. They've no experience of it. They maybe have a bias to a particular food group as against, what the restaurant is serving, and they can destroy that business. Like if you take it in journalism, and any journalist out there would acknowledge that when they start off their career, there's a learning curve. You make mistakes, you don't get it right, and you're educated and brought along. And it's the same for a restaurant. To castigate a restaurant on one visit, or feel you have the right to review them, and decide that their investment is wrong. Do it at least 3 times and then give a balanced view. But don't win on one occasion and then just, think that you have the right to do that. Sorry, that's my stuff.
No, it's very true, because, I mean, anything, you need to see something a few times to see the actual quality. And I often see that you could go into the same establishment, but it could be a different chef on any different day.
Exactly.
That makes it. I've noticed that myself, but that doesn't mean the establishment itself.
Yeah.
I think freedom of speech has probably been taken a bit too far. You can say anything today.
Yeah. Well, this is it. Like, I mean, you have experts out there and everything. I mean, we have people out there who have no training, have no sort of education in the sense of dietary or anything else, or nutrition and all the rest of it, are going in and now becoming experts and telling people what, lambasting their product because of their preference or their sort of sense of what they want. You know what I mean?
I wonder, is it though? I mean, if you're, I suppose like that, I think people love to hear, and you probably look, maybe people love to hear, a bit of negative news or a bit of,
Bad
scandal.
news.
Bad news or scandal, I mean, and you wonder, is that driving something in people that, that we like to look at something that kind of there's a bit of drama going on. Now, I love a bit of drama myself, but when I see there's no solution, if someone keeps
Yeah.
pointing out that something is, constantly an issue and that like they're going to fix it,
Yeah.
are they going to fix it? Because dead rightly, like hospitality has been severely struck in the last couple of years with like every second door closing. A lot of it has got because costs, and
Yeah,
it's a more complex model.
yeah, but again with that there, like I mean, with garden, like I mean, and I hear this touted out by a particular organisation about so many restaurants closing, etc., and sometimes I wonder, hold on, maybe look behind that. Some of these restaurants, my contention might be that during the COVID they were given support from the government. There was monies owed, and all of a sudden the monies became due, and it was, oh Jesus. Like I've talked to people, and people believe, a lot of people in the industry will have the same view, that maybe it was convenient for people to not reopen or to close their businesses because of maybe liabilities they had. You know what I mean? It's so I don't think. Restaurants. It's not a very profitable business. It's a very difficult. Like I mean, at the end of the day, you know, most restaurants are operating on a very tight margin, 3 to 4% profit, right?
Yeah.
So when you have the costs of electricity, you have the costs of, you know, food stuff. The cost of food is getting more and more expensive. The cost of preparing is getting more and more expensive. The cost of running your business is getting more expensive. The margins are tighter and tighter. And the reality is that there are places closing. And that's it, But as I say, some of them, I think some may have been closed for convenience, so that,
Yeah. And do you when you're doing reviews, like what are the main drivers that are you seeing out?
we never do reviews. We're more business to business. So when I'm out talking to the industry and I'm picking up stuff and I'm listening to them, the big challenge for the industry, staff, is massive. It's a massive problem, right? And the industry, in fairness, has adapted and has looked at that. There is now a better quality of life in regard to employment. There are, like hotels, probably more so than restaurants, in fairness, because it's easier done, but the better arrangements for staff. I mean, I know of numerous hotels that would have, we'll say, women who have children out there, who have commitments that they need time, then we can work certain times, and that's worked around. So there is that. There is that understanding. Chefs now have more rotas. It's not split shifts like they used to be. So, there is a far better quality of life. And, with hospitality operators realise that the key to their success are the people that they have, the employees. Like, sometimes you see the headlines, like X hotel opens, X amount million spent on it, and you hear very little about the staff or the people employed on it. They're the most important asset any business has. And that's hoteliers nowadays and people involved in hospitality realise that, and they're trying to work to ensure that their staff are well looked after and cared for, despite what the media, some salacious media might talk about,
I think that that's something you've said there that I wouldn't know. I mean, to say that hotels would, for anyone that may have children, that they do support that work-life balance, or that, chefs are not working the hours that they, is that, I don't know now, but is that not, marketed enough as a benefit for working in hospitality? Because I have not heard that.
Yeah, but it doesn't make good news. The better news is, like rip off Ireland and all this sort of, like there's a, the media will pick up on, will say, there's a concert in Dublin, right? And all of a sudden there's a demand for bed nights. And the story would be, beds are, a room is costing X amount on night X. That's because it's called supply and demand. It's economics. And it's the same the world over. It's the same if you go to Spain, if you go to Germany, if you go to Italy, and there's a big event on, yes, your rooms are going to be more expensive. It's like now we're into the high season, to use that phrase, for holidays. So if you're going on holidays now, your trip is going to cost you more because the schools are off and people are on holidays. It's supply and demand. So I think sometimes the media just love the salacious stories and that, the sort of extravagant headlines. They don't look behind it. They don't look behind the real story.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like, I
no,
mean,
very
if you
true.
want to have an equitable sense of fairness, for employment and all the rest of it, yeah, well, it has to be costed out, it has to be charged for. So the cost of insurance, the cost of electricity, the cost of keeping a property open is expensive. So room rates in Dublin are no different than any other major city. I mean, I was, there around there a while ago, and I know I paid a saucy price for a hotel room because it was at a particular time of the year, and that's it. And I accepted it.
Yeah, I know. I think I was down in Dingle, I think 2 years ago, and I couldn't believe what I paid. But sure, it was the Dingle Food Festival.
Yeah.
And I booked it last minute. I booked it a month beforehand, and I bore the brunt of it. But like that, supply and demand.
Yeah, but
Supply and
yeah,
demand.
like that. I remember years ago, I was going off to, a particular city, and without realizing there was a major conference taking place on it, you couldn't get a bed for love nor money, and I had to just scupper the trip because it would have been, I would have been paying about €500 per night for a room. It's so like so you just say no, that's not fees. You can't do that. But so I think the industry gets a bad press here a lot of the time from certain elements of media because they just love, like, there are certain radio programs where they love to talk about the cost of a room and all the cost of food and that there. And it makes me laugh. These guys that are, reporting on it or, you run, on these programs, if you want them to open an event or appear at an event, they're looking for 10 and 12 grand appearance money.
Yeah, and it is like how can you run something with the likes
Yeah.
of that, and that's exactly what's happening. But I think it's like that. It's down to if anyone is involved in the industry, they do it because they want to,
Yeah. No,
not
no.
because of what they're going to make from it. Because
Hospitality is, like, I mean, it doesn't suit everybody. There's no two ways about it. And I remember talking to a girl many, many years ago. She set up a company, I don't know if it's still going, but it's called Jobs Match. And I was identifying people that have certain skill sets and would be suited to certain positions in hospitality. Because sometimes you could have somebody at the front desk that has no interest in people, but they're great analysts, they're great, mathematical skills or other skills that are better in back office, but yet they're put in a position at the front desk that's not
yeah,
suited to them. Right. And this individual, in fairness to her, she was trying to organise it where she would identify people with their skill sets and identify them for a certain role within hospitality. I thought it was a great idea. I don't know if I don't know if she's still going. COVID may have ended her business, but
yeah, because it's the person you meet at the front desk, and I often notice that if I go to stay in a hotel, I notice the way the staff, and I always notice here the people cleaning the rooms seem to be the friendliest.
yeah,
That's what I've noticed is the people you meet in the corridor who are going in to clean them rooms say hello and how are you to you, and then find it's a lovely thing in someone, like, and there's so
yeah.
many people coming in and out of them rooms, but they're just engaged with people. That piece of customer service it should never go there. Yeah, no, there certainly isn't, because it's all hands on. It's all hands on. The hotel and restaurant times, then, how often does that be published, or can you tell us where we could read it? Fantastic. Oh, yeah. Will you write? Actually, that's mad now that you say. I used to buy magazines years ago, and I haven't bought a magazine in years. I'd still buy a book, but I would not buy a magazine for some reason. And these people, mad bunny like. I mean, I like buying them. But I used to buy them all the time, and I don't buy them anymore. You're after bringing me back there now. That's mad. Exactly. No, look, and it's like with everything, your business won't go if you don't move with it, and that's a big part of it. Cyril, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thanks so much for chatting with me. A mine of information as usual. Best of luck, and keep reporting the good stuff. I agree. Thank you, Cyril. Thank you. Bye bye.